And to give us an idea of its importance in the body politic, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage our first keynote speaker and the man who speaks for sport at the highest level of government. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and, I think we'll all agree, most importantly, sport, the Right Honourable John Whittingdale, MP.
Thanks, Jim, and good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you to open this Business of Sport conference. It's particularly appropriate that we should be meeting to discuss sport today, not least since this country has just seen one of the most extraordinary sporting achievements of all time. Jim referred to Leicester City, and it will be for others to determine whether their triumph in the Premiership is a bigger shock than Boris Becker winning Wimbledon at 17, or Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson, or indeed what Brian Clough achieved with Derby County and Nottingham Forest. But two things which are certain: what Leicester have achieved has got the whole world even more excited about English football, and Keith Vaz is going to keep wearing his Leicester City scarf until somebody can get it off him. It has been an extraordinarily exciting year across all of sport. I've got a great job. It means I have the good fortune to attend some of the greatest sporting events. I was last year at Wimbledon, at the British Grand Prix, and of course the Rugby World Cup. The first two of those are annual staples and among the most celebrated sporting events around the world. The Rugby World Cup, meanwhile, was widely seen to be the best ever. It was a real testament to the appetite for live sport in this country. And despite England's exit after just 3 games, fans still filled up stadia around the country throughout the tournament. That appetite for sport has also helped to make it big business in the UK. Sport is a key element of the government's broader growth agenda and a highly successful one. The Premier League is the best on earth. Not only are more fans than ever watching in fantastic stadiums, it is one of this country's most recognised brands. It generates £3.4 billion in GVA in 2013-14 and supports more than 100,000 jobs. 800,000 tourists attended a match last year, and the Premier League is now broadcast to 730 million homes in 185 countries. Sport-related consumer spending is worth around £30 billion each year. Motorsport Valley in the home counties employs 40,000 people in 3,500 companies. The Tour de France's 2014 visit to Yorkshire added about £100 million to that county's economy and helped draw attention to the one of the world's great attractions, the Dales. And there is, of course, a huge link between sport and the tourism sector, for which my department is also responsible. Just as cycling enticed people to Yorkshire, so football entices them to Manchester and Liverpool, and tennis takes them to Eastbourne and London. The sport tourism link also supports a wide range of jobs in hotels, bars, restaurants, sports marketing, and much else besides. One of the reasons that the government is so much in favour of hosting international sporting events is the economic boost that they give to the cities and towns. The Cricket World Cup is coming here in 2019, providing opportunities for places like Southampton, Taunton, Durham, and in 2017, Cardiff will host the Champions League final. When Wembley hosted that same event in 2013, London was awash with the red of Bayern Munich and the yellow of Borussia Dortmund, with many fans coming over to sample the atmosphere and spend money, even though an estimated 100,000 of them didn't actually have a ticket for the game. The Rugby World Cup generated nearly £1 billion and provided terrific entertainment, such as Japan's historic victory over South Africa. The Rugby League World Cup in 2013 was also a big success, with the final enjoying the biggest ever crowd for a rugby league international. And perhaps most impressive of all, the overall impact of hosting the 2012 Olympics and Paralympics is expected to be as high as £41 billion of GVA, with London re-establishing itself as the greatest city in the world. And we now have the NFL starting to bring games to this country with 3 further games later this year. That will provide another massive boost. And if a franchise locates here permanently, that will only increase. A lot of the money that sport in this country generates comes from television rights. Television has had a revolutionary impact on sport. It famously transformed the domestic popularity of snooker several decades ago, and that enthusiasm has now spread to China, and indeed China's John Wei recently came within a few frames of becoming the first Asian world champion. Sky, and of course now our hosts here, BT, have generated huge sums for the sports they screen while helping to grow and sustain interest and participation. We do not propose to reopen the debate about the listed sporting events. Rather than dictate to individual sports, I have always felt that it is better to allow national governing bodies and other rights holders to decide for themselves the correct balance between reaching the widest possible audience and generating as much revenue for their sport as they can. But it is our view that the starting point should always be how to ensure that the broadest audience can experience live sport. The consultation that led up to our sports strategy found a widespread eagerness for more coverage of smaller sports and women's sport. That is something which we very much wish to encourage. I know, for example, that weightlifting fans think that Eurosport's coverage of the sport has been excellent. I also welcome the Premier League cap of £30 for away supporters for the next 3 seasons, funded in part by their record-breaking TV deal. And I applaud the efforts of some clubs in the Football League to reduce season ticket prices and introduce concessions for young fans, and I hope that we will see more of this. A principle of the voluntary code of conduct on the broadcasting of major sporting events is that a minimum of 30% of net broadcasting revenue is put back into grassroots development within that sport, and that is very welcome. Whenever a sport makes significant money from a TV deal, I hope that it will plough a substantial amount into its grassroots. For the grassroots of sport are critically important. We want people of all ages and abilities to be inspired to make sport a central part of their lives. The benefits are huge and varied. We know that sport has a positive impact on health, crime, well-being, and social cohesion. It also has an economic impact. Physical activity adds £39 billion to the UK economy every year, half of which comes from people's involvement in grassroots sport. The more people get active, the more the economy grows, and it is a virtuous circle. That was why the excellent Minister for Sport, Tracy Crouch, launched our new sports strategy last year, which explores the many ways in which many more people can become active. It includes our consulting on how the corporation tax system might expand support for grassroots sport. We are determined to back all levels of sport, and I want to see the elite end of sport pulling its weight and supporting the grassroots on which it depends. After all, in 2012, Jamie Vardy was playing for Fleetwood Town. Now he has several England caps and a Premiership winners' medal. And as I'm also quick to remind people, Alistair Cook started his career at Malden Cricket Club, of which I am a vice president. He is an honorary life member of the club and also a regular visitor back to the club. A very useful reminder that all the best sportsmen and women remember where they came from and that sport belongs to all of us. I recently met at the Speaker's reception in Parliament Leon Smith, the brilliant captain of the first GB team to win the Davis Cup since 1936. It was a fantastic achievement, but I was even more pleased to learn that one of the first things that he did after that win was to use the momentum created to start enthusing more youngsters to play the sport. Along with Annabel Croft, he is overseeing a scheme called Tennis for Kids, working with coaches to get children involved in the sport and to create an environment where they don't just try tennis but stick with it. It's great to see elite coaches and athletes give back to their sport in this way. Some governing bodies have done good work too, such as the RFU through its CBRE All Schools programme, which aims to increase the amount of rugby in schools and encourage new players to join local clubs. The RFU invested £32.5 million last year in the grassroots game, an increase of 5% on the previous year. And we are also incredibly fortunate to have so many unpaid volunteers up and down the country without whom sport would collapse. We are supporting those volunteers and the grassroots with some of our best talent stars. The Premier League, which will earn over £5 billion in the next 3 seasons, already makes a significant investment in grassroots. However, the fact that it goes from strength to strength should have a commensurate impact on the lower levels of the sport. The Premier League has now agreed with the government that it will at least double its investment into community football over the coming 3 seasons. And that means over £100 million for the next 3 years will go to grassroots facilities and programmes where it is needed most. The funding details are dependent on the outcome of the Ofcom investigation into the sale of Premier League audiovisual rights in the UK. That is not something over which the government has any say, but we obviously maintain a keen interest in how it develops. The British public has an extraordinary appetite for sport as participants and spectators. We must not, however, abuse that position. There have been a spate of shocking allegations and revelations in recent months. What has been revealed as going on in FIFA is reprehensible and appalling. Accusations of match fixing in tennis and snooker and allegations of doping in athletics are deeply disquieting. All of these damage the reputation of sport, and it is essential that all corruption be rooted out and dealt with. It is vitally important that sports bodies at home and abroad uphold the highest standards of governance, transparency, and accountability. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister is hosting an international anti-corruption summit, the first of its kind. He will be welcoming international governments, businesses, and organisations leading the fight against all corruption, including sports bodies. It is the right thing to do. Government invests millions in sport and has a responsibility to the taxpayer and lottery player to see that their money is well spent. We have a responsibility to tackle corruption wherever it is to be found, whether in sport or anywhere else. We want to inspire other governments to take a similarly robust position. Across the world, governments are the single biggest investor in sport, whether in grassroots, elite funding, or major events. Domestically, we have a good record, but more needs to be done, especially if we are to lead the world by example. UK Sport and Sport England are drafting a domestic code which will be launched later in the year. It will include new rules on governance, financial transparency, and diversity. There are cases where certain minimum standards are not being met in regard to independence, conflicts of interest, and term limits. That is a betrayal of athletes and the public alike, and in future, where those standards are not met, we will not invest public money. I was disappointed to see that the FA have again rejected the opportunity to reform their outdated and unrepresentative governance model. So we will be writing to the FA to make clear that if they don't make sufficient progress on reform, they will not get a penny of taxpayers' money in the future. We would look instead to route money for grassroots football to other organisations that will adhere to the Code of Good Governance. It is also vitally important that fans continue to feel connected to their clubs. In January, the government's expert working group published a report on football supporter ownership and engagement. It has been well received by the football authorities and by supporters groups. The report contained proposals on improving dialogue between fans and clubs and about making it more realistic for fans to bid for ownership of their club when opportunities should arise. And from next season, club owners will be expected to talk with a representative group of supporters about matters of strategic importance, giving them more information and a chance to hold key people to account. This year is going to be another momentous one for sport. We have 3 major events to look forward to in Euro 2016, the Olympics and the Paralympics. We are looking forward to an exciting European Championship in France, and we wish the English, Welsh and Northern Irish teams good luck for a successful tournament. Memories of the London Olympics and Paralympics in 2012 are still fresh in our minds, and the government remains committed to their legacy. We had an excellent settlement in the autumn statement, whereby we are increasing central government funding for elite sport, and therefore we want to keep the medals count up at Rio this year and Tokyo in 2020. Sport is something that we are great at. It is one of our biggest drivers of talent. It boosts our economy, it gives us international clout and national pride, and it is hugely enjoyable. This government is making a record investment in sport because sport in this country has the potential to be even bigger and better. We want to see all corruption sniffed out and strangled, and as many people as possible from all backgrounds enjoy the multiple benefits of a sporting life. We will therefore continue to implement all the goals in our sports strategy, and we will continue to work with all of you to deliver these benefits. Thank you very much and enjoy your conference.